Hey, and we are back, and we are talking about what's new in ASP.NET 5. We've got Daniel Roth. Hey, how are you, sir?
I'm good.
Thank you for coming. We've got a lot of cool stuff here. We're going to do two sessions, two modules here with Daniel. The first 50 minutes are going to be kind of an introduction to ASP.NET 5, and it's mostly demos, isn't it?
Mostly demos. Yeah, mostly looking at Visual Studio and code and how to get started, getting your hands dirty on the bits.
All right, let's see the slide and learn a little bit about Daniel. There we go. So yeah, so you work on ASP.NET, but you also worked on WCF before this, didn't you?
I did. I've been basically working on the .NET framework for a little over a decade now, and it's been great. I love .NET. WCF. Before that, I was working a little bit on XAML, actually, system.xaml. And then before that, I actually worked on the ASMX, like ASP.NET web services.
Yeah.
So a little ASP.NET early on, and then the managed networking APIs, like managed sockets and the HTTP stack.
So you're a long-time web person.
Yeah, well, certainly long-time .NET person.
All right, very cool. Next slide.
And who's this person?
And then I'm still me, and you can still search about me.
That's
it's
right.
It's not about me, it's all about you.
Cool, so let's talk about ASP.NET 5. So what I thought we would do is we'll do like a getting started, like how do you get your hands dirty with the bits as fast as possible? What do you need to install? Where can you go for the docs? And then we're going to go talk about what is the new ASP.NET 5 project system look like. Because it is a little different. Some things have changed. How to get your way around the new folder structure and how things build and those type of concerns. And then lastly, we'll talk about actually building up your application, how you deal with the new HTTP request pipeline, how you think about the new runtime and where you can host it. Like you can host it now in more places than you ever could before. You can host it in IIS, which is our premier web server still, of course. But you can now host it in your own process if you'd like to. You can even host it on Linux or a cross-platform server if that's what you want to do. So we'll talk about actually building applications and dealing with HTTP concerns. So first, though, how do you actually get started with ASP.NET 5? What do you need to do to actually get the bits? The first thing you should do is you should go to asp.net/vnext, and you need to install Visual Studio 2015. There is a new project system that comes with ASP.NET 5, new tooling. You're going to want all these things, and so you're going to need to download the preview of Visual Studio 2015 onto your machine.
You can do this side by side. It's safe?
It's safe, yes. It installs cleanly side by side with Visual Studio 2013, and you can remove it. It doesn't affect anything else on the machine. I do this all the time, and it works just fine. Yeah, okay. So that's what you're going to want to do. The docs are also at that same spot. If you want to learn, like, how do I get started with an ASP.NET 5 project, get an overview of the system, that's where you're going to find all of our preview documentation at asp.net/vnext. And more documentation just keeps getting added there. That's where we're adding our docs. The code, of course, is the best documentation. And you'll find the code on GitHub, github.com/asp.net, ASP.NET. And I recommend starting at the home repo. That has like get you oriented in terms of where everything is at. It has some initial instructions if you want to do things from the command line, which we'll be talking about later in the day. But that's where you can find all of our repositories. MVC, the runtime, Razor, routing. It's all there. You can look at the code. You can debug through it and see what's actually going on underneath the covers. And if you need help, if you run into any issues or want to ask the community some questions or the product team questions, we're out there in a variety of places. We have a forum. On the ASP.NET site, there's a set of forums, and there's a vNext forum that you can post questions to. We're also on Stack Overflow. There's a tag here that you can use. And then our product team members also regularly hang out on Jabber, which is like a live chat room. You can find us and our architects there hanging out. You can ask us questions and give us suggestions and all those types of things. OK. So let's assume that you've gone and installed Visual Studio. Now, what do you do now? Let's go take a look at it. So I happen to have Visual Studio 2015 already installed on this machine. This is actually a slightly newer build than the actual official preview build. This is bits that are coming out soon that we hope to get into people's hands soon. So a few things may look slightly different if you have the official preview already on your machine, but these are things that'll be coming and be in your hands shortly as well.
But the concepts are the same?
Concepts are the same.
Okay.
No major changes. If there are any changes, I'll call them out.
Okay.
All right, so what do we do first? You're going to want to do File New Project. All right, and when you do File New Project, you should go to the web node. That's where you build, if you want to build web applications, that's where you're going to go. And you'll see that there's a couple new project templates that show up here. First of all, there's ASP.NET web application. Well, that's the project template that you know and love. That's where you'll find the new, like the one ASP.NET dialog that lets you pick between MVC, Web API, web forms, and there are, of course, ASP.NET 5 project templates there as well. There's also these two new templates, the notion of an ASP.NET 5 class library, and that might be interesting. Why is there an ASP.NET 5 specific class library? Well, one way you can think about it, well, first of all, it plugs really seamlessly into the new ASP.NET 5 project system. That's what that guy's there for. It's already set up with the new project system and the build system. It also, you can think of it more like a package. Like I think of it actually as the ASP.NET 5 NuGet package template, because it makes it really easy for you to build NuGet packages from class libraries. It's sort of a first class notion in that project template. And then lastly, there's an ASP.NET 5 console application, which is really interesting. Why do you build ASP.NET 5 console applications? Remember we talked about that ASP.NET 5 can be hosted in more places than ever before. You can host it in IIS. You could host it in your own process. This is a template that you could use to host it in your own process. It's also just a really simple place to do hello world. Like if you just want to have a console and print out some text and see how the new system works, how the NuGet packages works and the build system. That's like a playground that you could use.
So it's a console app that uses the new project system.
New project system, console app, and it's set up to use. You can do like self-hosting of ASP.NET 5 applications in that template.
All right, cool.
But let's go ahead and build just a standard web app. Let's go there, and let's call this MVA demo. Okay, so here's the standard one ASP.NET dialog, and here's those two new templates that I talked about. The first one here is the starter web template, and this will feel really familiar if you've ever done File New Project, MVC 5 project. This guy will feel very familiar in terms of when you run it. Like it's got Bootstrap wired up, it's got ASP.NET Identity wired up, you can log in, it's got jQuery included, it's got all the bells and whistles. EF is in there, and actually I have a version of it already created just to...
Well, and could you go back real quick?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah, I noticed that, go ahead and click on like MVC at the top.
Yeah, up here.
You see how those check boxes there, you can check, this is part of one ASP.NET. You could click on Web API and include that, but when you click on Starter Web, those are all grayed out.
Yes. That's because, and we'll be talking about this soon, is that in ASP.NET 5, MVC, Web API, Web Pages are now all one thing.
Okay.
You just add the web framework. We call it MVC 6 is the new brand, but they're all actually there. You can do all the things that you want to do in terms of Web API development, Web UI development, all within that one project template.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. And I apologize for the fonts. I made everything big, and that caused some weird overlaying of some text.
Sure.
But like I said, I already created a starter web template, and you can see here it's got tons of stuff in it. It's got configuration. We're looking at some of the code here. It's got EF. You can see identity, MVC. It's quite a bit. A little overwhelming to get started. So I think what we'll actually do is we'll just do empty. Let's just start with like blank slate and build up from scratch.
And you'll explain to us what's going on with all that. So by the end of this, we'll feel comfortable.
By the end, we'll understand that starter web template much better. Okay, so when you do an empty project, this is empty. Like there's like nothing here. If we run this guy, we should expect to see like 404 essentially from IS. So saying, yeah,
oh, really?
There's nothing.
So you run it, nothing, literally nothing.
This is empty.
I thought not even hello world.
You don't have to delete anything other than this little, helper HTML page that we give you to give you a bunch of links to find out how to get started. That's the only thing in this template, this little project README that you have to delete.
Okay.
Everything else is just the bare bones, what you need to get going. Okay. Now, so first, let's go through. Let's actually get something running. Really fast. Let's do, how do you do hello world in this template? So here's the actual project template, and we're going to talk about what all these folders mean in a second. But before we do that, let's just see if we can get something to actually display in the browser. So to do that, I'm going to go to startup.cs, and this is really where the guts of your application are defined. This is where you set up your HTTP request pipeline. Anything you want to do with an HTTP request coming into ASP.NET 5, you do it here. And I'm going to do the simplest possible thing you could possibly do. When I see a request, I'm just going to return some text. That's what we want to do. Now, you see this app builder. That's the guy you're going to use to build up your app. So again, already this is a little different. Like normally in an ASP.NET app, you expect to see like global ASAX. You expect to see a bunch of application events. In ASP.NET 5, you're going to be looking for that same logic in startup.cs.
So this is kind of like global ASAX's application start, but all the other stuff like request, this and that, and all those things are not here.
They're not here. That's right.
I set all that up inside this one function.
This is where you're going to set it up.
Okay.
Yep. So let's start building up my app, and I just want to return some text, so I'm going to use this this method called run. And if we look at the signature, let me see if I can do that the zoom trick. So you see that it takes a request delegate. Now, what is a request delegate? That's a pretty simple concept, actually. Let's look at it. Let me look over this guy. So you see a request delegate is something that takes a, let me snap it so I can, it takes an HTTP context. Mm-hmm. So that sounds familiar, right?
Yeah,
HTTP context. And then it returns task. Okay, HTTP context and returns task. So pretty easy. Like I'm going to get the request, and then I can do asynchronous stuff, and I can send something on the response just like you would with an HTTP context in the system web world. Now this is not the system web world, so this HTTP context looks a little different.
I noticed that it's not system.web.http.
That's right. This is the Microsoft ASP.NET HTTP context, part of ASP.NET 5. It's new. This thing works not just in IIS, in the standard ASP.NET pipeline. It runs anywhere, on Linux, on Mono, on.
But I assume it behaves like the HTTP context that I know about. It's
it has
concept compatible.
A lot of similarities. Like there's HTTP context response request. There's no HTTP context current because we generally shy away from using statics throughout the system in ASP.NET 5, so things are more testable and easier to manage.
Oh, okay.
But a lot of the things that you would expect to be there are.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and create our request delegate. Now I'm just going to create the delegate inline. So I'm going to take the HTTP context. Now I want to do something async. And so I don't know, some people don't know this trick, but you can actually define a lambda that's async just by prefixing it with async. And I'm going to set up a little lambda function here. And then I want to write out some text. So I'm going to await context.response.write async and hi MVA. How about that? Okay. And let's close up our semicolon. So what does that do? So we take the HTTP context in. This is a request delegate, remember, it's asynchronous. And then we're going to write to the response asynchronously, hi MVA. All right. Now I'm just going to save this. One of the cool things about ASP.NET 5, by the way, and the tooling, is there's really no explicit build step. Like I think I already have this running, right? Yeah, here's like, there's nothing here, right? I think I can just refresh this, and boom, it's just there.
It's pretty fast.
It's kind of like, you know, like those interpreted style programming models like Ruby or Node. You just edit the code, you save it, and you have 5, and it's there. You edit, you save, you have 5. You want to see that again? That's like let me go back.
So when you hit build, it doesn't really do anything. It's like spell check.
Yeah, basically, yeah. So I'm going to put a whole bunch more exclamation point save, F5 the browser. A little lag there, but you can see all those.
Right, that lag was the build.
Yeah, that's right. It's actually doing, it's like tearing down the process and restarting it again with the build and restore. And the build is actually happening in memory using I think the official name is the .NET compiler platform, but everyone calls it Roslyn, like
right.
the Roslyn compiler libraries, which is pretty cool. So all the compilation is happening in memory. Okay, so that's hello world. Like we just created our first ASP.NET 5 application. And next, let's go.
One quick question, though. I think the hello world, a lot of people might have understood as they'd make like a default ASPX and they type response.write hello world. That would include a whole bunch of extra stuff. This is raw. This is like there's no framework. There's
nothing else here. There's no like forms auth module. There's no like
no modules of any kind.
Yeah,
right?
no modules at all. Like,
is there any web config? There's nothing.
There's in ASP.NET 5 we've actually gone with a new lightweight config system.
Okay.
We'll show that in a minute. But yeah, there's no web.config at all in the
And you went not response.write, but response.write async. So
yep.
People got to really start thinking about async.
Yes, everything in the system is async because threads on the server are a precious resource.
So that means potentially performance is going to be a lot easier to achieve in this new world.
Yep. That's
all right.
the idea. Now let me hop back over the slide. So that was hello world. Now what we want to do next is talk about the project system. So this is a point where we'll take that people can think about a little bit what they've just done. Mm-hmm. All right, let's go to the project system. All right, so let's look at what we actually have here in the solution. So first of all, there's some solution items. There's this global.json file. Let's ignore that for just a second. I'll come back to it and then explain it. So there's also this source file at the top. Like we actually are being a little bit more opinionated about the structure of the folders in your solution. We put your source underneath the sources folder. This is a fairly common pattern that we see in projects on GitHub. And it's fairly common also to have another folder sitting next to it that's like test, which has all your tests. It's not actually the stuff that's not part of your app, but you're using to actually test your app. So this global JSON file is just a little file that tells the runtime that the source code for this solution can be found under the sources folder, but there's also more stuff under test. And so that projects that are in either folder can find each other. So that's what that sources property is in global.json. That's all it's doing. There's no actual tests folder in the empty project because it's empty. But if you were to add one, this would make your test projects be able to easily reference your your class libraries and your web application projects under source. Okay, and then this solution only has one project underneath source, MVA demo. And then we have some new interesting nodes here. So the first one is www root. What is this? Well, this is the web root of your application. Like you can think of this as like this is where your web server is sort of looking at, like it's parked at. Like this is where if you have static files like an HTML file, that's where you would expect to serve them out of. That if you had script files, that's where you expect them to be. And the reason why this folder exists is because we want to have a nice separation between stuff that's really only server side, like code and binaries, things that are meant to only stay in the server, they're never supposed to be served up, and the stuff that's actually intended to be served by the web server. So the web root is www root.
So in ASP.NET today, if I wanted to have like my fave icon, I would stick that at the MVA demo level in ASP.NET current. In this next version, I would put it in www root.
Yes, because that's something that you'll want to be able to serve in response to an HTTP request.
Okay.
So just to show that, let me add a simple static file here. Let me add like a little HTML page. That one looks fine. Let's put something in here like.
Okay, so if I put that HTML page at the root level, it would be ignored. I couldn't get to it from there. I can't serve it from there.
That's right. Like nothing outside this www root would get served. And also, because the startup is currently saying like respond with hi MVA for everything, let me just comment that out. There. Okay. So save. All right. Now if we go back over here, I should expect to be able to go to HTML page.
And is ASP.NET set up to give you static files by default?
So we said that there's nothing in ASP.NET 5 unless you put it there inside that startup file. It's empty. And that includes actually even support in ASP.NET 5 for serving up static files. So ASP.NET 5 itself, yeah, it wouldn't even serve up a static file. Now the server that you sit on top of may have functionality that it just provides. Like depending on the server you pick, you get different stuff. And IIS is a wonderful server, and it happens to have a wonderful native module for doing static files. It's blazingly fast,
I see.
and it's always there. Like the ASP.NET 5 doesn't remove the native components that just come with IIS. So in this case, this should work. Let's make sure. Yeah, so that worked. That was IIS though.
But let me guess, if I were doing this in my own process, hosted my own HTTP server, I'd have to pick that file up and I'd have to basically opt in to ASP.NET static file serving.
Yes, and we'll show you how to do that.
Oh,
I'll show you that
cool.
in a minute.
That
But for now, that's the concept of www root, though, is that's where static content is really going to get served from.
All right, that makes sense.
All right. Okay. Now there's a bin folder here, and this is just a little artifact that's used by the runtime to wire ASP.NET 5 into IIS, essentially. It's sort of a bootstrapper. It's not really part of your application. It's just something that the runtime puts there to bootstrap ASP.NET 5.
If I delete that, will it come back?
I don't know.
All right, well,
you can try it on your.
Let's
try
not
it at
find
home.
out.
It should probably honestly be hidden. It's more of a under the covers thing.
I see.
Okay.
That is a real folder, though, to be clear. Even though it has a little globe there, that's a folder.
Oh, yeah. Shall we look at
it
it?
exists on the disk, just to be clear?
Let me pop it up. So here's the actual
Just checking.
www folder, and it has a bin folder, and there's the page.
Okay.
This is just the normal folder structure.
All right, cool.
All right, and then dependencies. This is a new node. This is an interesting node. This is stuff that your project depends on, and this is an empty project, so it doesn't actually have anything in it. But if we go to the, let's go to the starter web template. Whoops, I can't cycle quickly. That one. There we go. In Starter Web, dependencies has all sorts of interesting things in here, like NPM packages that your app needs. NPM is the Node package manager. Maybe you're using Node packages for client-side development, or Bower packages that your app is using. These are things that your app needs, and so they show up under that dependencies node. So you mostly find like client-side libraries that you're depending on underneath there. And then references is the same references node you know and love, but improved with additional functionality. One of the great things about references now is that it first classes the concept of referencing NuGet packages in your application. Everything that we do in ASP.NET 5, all the dependencies that your app has from a .NET runtime perspective are all expressed in terms of NuGet packages. And there's first-class notions of like adding NuGet packages, removing NuGet packages, creating NuGet packages, loading from NuGet packages. Like package management really has like changed the way people do development today. You don't go to websites and like download binaries and then reference them in your project anymore. Pretty much you find what you need for your projects using a package management system. NuGet is a fantastic system for .NET, and in ASP.NET 5 we basically said that's how you're going to find things. In fact, you reference them directly from the runtime. And so all the packages that your application is referencing show up here. Now you'll notice that there's also these two top-level elements. And what this is showing me is all the target frameworks that my project is being built for.
Target frameworks, plural.
Frameworks, yes. More than one target framework. Like this app is currently set up by default to run on ASP.NET 5 on the .NET framework, like the .NET framework that comes with Windows, the .NET framework we've known and loved for well over a decade. But there's also ASP.NET 5 that can run on .NET Core, the lightweight, componentized version of .NET that's open source, that just comes as a set of NuGet packages that you can literally bin deploy with your application. This app is being built for both. And it's important that you realize that's different, because the API surface areas in .NET Core versus the full .NET framework are slightly different, and you need to account for those differences in your app.
But if I may be a little critical, that's probably not a very well-named thing, because there's only ASP.NET 5, isn't there? Right? There isn't an ASP.NET Core 5. There's ASP.NET 5 on .NET Core.
Because we could change these names to be
But
clear
just for people to understand, though, that ASP.NET 5 runs on both the desktop framework and the .NET Core framework.
That's
and
right.
it is the same ASP.NET 5, right?
It is the same ASP.NET 5.
Okay, because I just wanted to make sure that there isn't an ASP.NET Core 5.
The moniker that we use in like your NuGet packages to say here's the binaries for running on .NET Core, we currently use ASP.NET Core 5.0, and so these names reflected the monikers that show up in the NuGet packages.
Oh, okay,
But,
that makes sense.
So it could go either way. It could be more of the more user-friendly version of the text, or it could be closer to the NuGet package string. Currently, it leans closer to the NuGet package string, but arguably, because it's such in the user's face, maybe it should be the more user-friendly.
And you'll explain more about, like, when I'm writing an ASP.NET 5 app, what can I do that would get me in trouble where I no longer can run on .NET Core versus?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool.
We'll get that done in a second.
Awesome.
So let's look inside what these things have, and there's all your NuGet packages. Currently, there's just one. When running on .NET Framework, you also have the option of referencing binaries that are in the GAC. So that's what we're seeing here. These are GAC references. But here I have one package, and it's saying Microsoft.ASP.NET Server IIS. This is basically the package you need to be able to run ASP.NET 5 on IIS.
So the little gift, that's a NuGet package, and then the little squares, that is a regular GACT package, like I've always done before.
Yeah, just a normal assembly reference. Now, nice thing here is you can expand this. Like you're now traversing the dependency graph for all the NuGet packages that you depend on. And when you express your NuGet package dependencies in ASP.NET 5, you express the top-level package dependencies, and then it just figures out the rest of them. You don't need to worry about all the leaf nodes of the tree. Just reference the top-level package that you need, and the system will figure out the rest. So technically, this app does depend on these other sub-dependencies of the top-level dependency, but you don't need to directly express that. Now, where do you express that? Is of course the next question. Like, where does that come from? How do I know that I'm referencing those packages? Well, that comes from this new artifact, project.json. ASP.NET 5 apps always have a project.json. This is really what makes this an ASP.NET 5 application. So let's go look what's inside here. All right. So first of all, you can see the fact that www.root is my web root is defined in project.json. If I wanted my web root to be, Dan or Dan Roth, I could change that here, and then the folder name could name it accordingly. So that's where the actual web root is defined, is in your project.json file.
And comparing that with global.json, I'm seeing you have choice at every level. If you don't like the name of something, you can easily change it.
Complete control, very explicit. This is the version of the application. This is perhaps even more relevant if this was a class library, because then you're actually determining the version of the component that you're shipping in NuGet. And then exclude here is saying, don't bother trying to look in the www root folder for stuff to compile, because that's my web root, so you probably won't find code there normally. Pack exclude is really about publishing. It's just making sure that when you take this project and bundle it up with all the packages it needs into a single thing that you can deploy to a server, don't bother deploying these things because they're not relevant in a deployment scenario. All right, but now we've gotten to the things that are interesting. So what are my dependencies? Well, they're defined under dependencies. This is where all the dependencies for my application are defined. And then for the target frameworks that I'm compiling against, they're listed under framework. So there's that ASP NET 5.0, ASP NET Core 5.0, hence where the names came from. So how do I add a dependency? Let's say I want to add something new. Well, you can still do like right-click, manage NuGet packages from the UI. And this is the new NuGet client UI for dealing with packages. Let me see if I can get something to show up here instead of it just being empty. You can install NuGet packages using the UI, and that works just fine. The nice thing about this new UI is it's no longer modal. Like you can just sort of leave it here as a tab and do work on your project, and then come back and install more packages and do more work on your project, and you can have that nice parallelism going on. So it's pretty decent. But all this guy will actually do under the covers is a very simple edit to project.json. Let me show you what it will do. If you actually were to install a package, it would just add it here under dependencies. Like, let me add a package. There's a package that, a simple little package called Microsoft.ASP.NET.Diagnostics. And this guy just has like an error page, a welcome page, error handler logic. It basically has the yellow screen of death in it. If you want to have a yellow screen of death for your ASP.NET 5 application, you've got to add it. It doesn't come for free. So you got to add the package, and this is the yellow screen of death package.
I'm disappointed you didn't call it YSOD.
Oh, sorry, the YSOD.
You should name the package that.
Maybe we should name it that, yeah.
So you're bringing that net down now?
Yeah, and notice I got IntelliSense over the package ID, and I also get IntelliSense over the version of the package that I want to reference. When you set up your dependencies, it's a package ID and a version. Pretty straight.
Now that has a different build number. Is that good or bad?
So this is like I said, this is a newer bit. So this is a specific build of Beta 2. We ship Beta 1 with preview.
Right.
And the packages, they all build on their own rhythm. So dev checks in. We check it into our GitHub repositories. The CI server kicks off a new build, and you get a new build of that particular package. So the build numbers aren't necessarily all aligned on the same number across everything in ASP.NET 5. And you can just expect that to continue because it's a loosely coupled set of packages that you pull in what you need.
But this won't cause, like this one being newer, is not going to cause a bunch of other new stuff to kind of roll in as a big dependency.
That's really more of a question of like which NuGet package feeds I've got configured and what the package says its dependencies are.
Okay.
So I have control over which packages it will find by just changing which package sources that I let it look at. If I go let it look at like the ASP.NET 5 dev feed, it's going to pick up whatever the latest build is that does check in on that guy. And maybe that's what you want. Like maybe you're doing active development, you want to use the latest greatest packages. If you want to use like more stable released packages, then you probably just would set up your feed to use NuGet.org. In which case you would only find, for example, Beta 1 packages. This particular the version that you just saw, you notice it had like a little folder icon next to it.
Right.
That meant that this is actually the locally installed version of that package that came with VS.
Ah, that's what the folder means.
Yes. Now, and when it had the little like, if it has a little NuGet icon underneath it, then that means it's actually coming from one of your feeds.
Oh, okay. So I could potentially be editing my project.json on an airplane with my local NuGet cache, and it's fine as long as I have the little folder icon.
That's right.
All right.
Now if I save this, now watch carefully. Watch in the Solution Explorer. As soon as I hit save, it kicked off what's called a package restore. And you'll notice, boom, it just shows up.
That was fast.
So you edit, you save, and then your project just updates. Okay, and some similar thing if you want to remove it. And that's all that the right-click NuGet Package Manager does. It just adds the package ID to your project JSON, and then saves it and kicks off a package restore. That's all it's really.
So somebody's watching project.json.
There are file watchers involved here. Yes. But good ones, very benevolent. They're not the,
Who watches the file watcher? Okay.
That's right. So again, if I save, then it just disappears again.
Cool.
That's adding and removing packages. Okay. Now, what about though if you actually want to reference a project? Like how do you do that? So let me let's add another project here. So let's add.
So this would be where the ASP.NET class library comes in then.
There you go.
See?
That's
There you
right.
go.
So we want one of these guys because one of these guys is set up already with project.json. You know, it's set up with that build system, that notion of having packages as first-class notions and building. It can itself be easily built into a package.
And this is interesting because in the other project.json, you had frameworks, ASP.NET 5 and ASP.NET Core 5. But here it looks like you can have dependencies different based on your target framework.
That's right. That's right. And you may need that. Like, for example, if you're in on the .NET framework, and you're referencing, you know, what's effectively MS Core Lib, you know, like the and system.dll. Like there's tons of stuff that's just in those binaries. They're fairly all-inclusive in terms of the way they've been architected. So you don't need to like go out of your way and say, I would like to reference, you know, system.collections.
Yeah.
But if you're on .NET Core, all those things have been broken apart into separate NuGet packages. Like you have the base class libraries basically shipping on NuGet.org as a set of factored NuGet packages. And you do need to say, yeah, I would like to use collections, because if you don't say it, then you don't get it. That type of.
So here you're actually having to say, I want system.runtime.
I would like system runtime. You don't need to say that when you're running on the .NET framework, but when you're running on ASP.NET Core 5.0, you do need to say
That makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, but that's where you would define framework-specific dependencies. It's worth also noting that if you want to reference something else that's in the GAC that's not a NuGet package when you're running on the full desktop framework, there is a way to do that. If I can, where is it? It's up here. Yeah, framework assemblies. And then you would.
Oh, and there's your, I see, and there's your local reference to the GAC.
Yeah, that's right. That's where we would put those guys. And that's only in the ASP.NET 5.0 notion, because that's where the GAC lives.
It's nice that you get like really good tooling for that within, like, you don't have to do this all by yourself with no IntelliSense.
Yeah, the IntelliSense makes it very, very fast, actually. I don't know how I ever lived working with NuGet packages without this IntelliSense. It's very nice. Okay, so I've got a little class library. Let's just make this a simple static class 1, public static string. Something like that, and we'll return a string. Like, hello from class 1. Okay? Now let's reference this guy. How do we do that? You can right-click and add reference. And click this button. Now, just like with managing NuGet packages, this is going to do something very, very simple. Actually, before I do, let me open up the project JSON file. So here's my project JSON file. There's the existing dependencies.
Right.
If I right-click, add reference, yes, I would like to reference this class library. All it did was add that. That's it. There's actually nothing that gets touched in your CS, your kproj, your project file. This is where the project reference gets expressed.
And then the watcher saw that.
Yeah, and the watcher saw that. If I wanted to do this manually, you also do get IntelliSense over that as well. You can see class library 1 shows up as being a project in the solution that you can just reference.
And that package restore that happens when it gets saved, that's because the watcher is making that happen. If I wasn't using Visual Studio, I'd probably have to do that myself.
Yeah, you'd have to handle that.
Okay.
Okay, great. So now I've referenced. Let's see if that actually can do something with that. Let me go back here.
So then IntelliSense is smart enough to know about all that then.
Presumably. Let's see. Let's create a message equals class library 1. There it is. Class library 1 and get message. And then let's change our hi thing here to message. Save. And then where's my browser? And then not HTML page, but let's just go back to, to the root, which should be fine. There. So
and there's still nothing in your bin folder. It's still...
There's nothing in the bin. It's empty. Shall we look at it again?
So it compiled everything in memory. There's still no...
Now, artifacts that get built, I believe, get built up at the solution level. I don't know if you saw it. So here's my solution folder. Okay. And there is this artifacts folder. And this is where, like if there was something being built, it would go here. But you can see that the bin folder for MVA demo is empty.
Nice.
Now, if I wanted to have something show up here, you can do that, and you can do that from within VS. So if you go to this class library and you actually want to turn this class library into a NuGet package, a nupkeg, as some people say, on disk that you can upload to NuGet.org and share with the world. How do you do that? You right-click Properties, and in Build, there's this produce outputs on build checkbox. That's the magic checkbox. Save that guy. Let's build again.
Little big font, small font action.
Yeah, sorry about that. It does save. There, see?
Somebody will fix that.
There. Yeah.
I'll file that bug right now.
And let's see if we've actually got something under bin now. So there's class library 1 shows up now under debug. We've got NuGet packages and simple
Interesting.
packages.
So produce output doesn't mean make DLLs. It really is all about NuGet right now.
All about NuGet.
And I assume the DLL's inside the NuGet then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These are the folders that were used to actually produce those NuGet packages, and inside the NuGet you'll find exactly.
And
the
you
same
even made debug symbols as a parallel NuGet, an optional parallel NuGet. Very cool.
That's right.
I like it.
So very easy to add, remove, install, create NuGet packages is a key concept in ASP.NET 5. All right, so that's that part. Okay, what else do we want to do here? So we did references, we added Project JSON, we did in-memory compilation, there's nothing in the bin. Oh, let's talk about cross-compiling just a little bit. So you notice that like I'm referencing multiple projects. If we go to, let's see, let's go to the startup.cs. And let's look at some IntelliSense here. Like, I don't know, like, what's an interesting class that we could do?
System.xml, you have that?
XML. I mean, we don't even have that package reference. Like, I don't know, like a string. Let's just something random.
Okay.
Let's get that guy going.
So what are we doing?
We want to see, maybe it's only for,
What are you trying to do?
I want to see like a combined IntelliSense. Why am I going to go find IntelliSense right now?
I saw it when you did down at the bottom there, when you were doing context.response.
Yeah. Maybe
You got like a pop-up when you said write async.
Let me do it here and see if I can get it to. So what I should.
You've got a daily build of your Visual Studio here.
I know. It's very
You're
exciting.
living on the edge.
We want types. There, like that's the guy we want. Okay, see here?
Oh, look at that.
It only shows up probably if there's a difference, that when you have like a difference between the different target frameworks. So you'll notice here that HB context 5.0 not available, core 5.0 available. What this is trying to do is give you a view into which APIs are actually available when compiling for that particular target framework, and which ones are not. Like which ones are going to cause problems if you use them, and which ones will not cause problems if you use them. So this hopefully gives you right up front, like when you're trying to what you're literally doing is cross-compiling for multiple target frameworks at the same time. As you cross-compile, IntelliSense will sort of guide you and say, hey, these little warning icons are saying there's something that could be different here.
Well, it says there you can use the navigation bar to switch context. What does that mean?
Oh, yeah. So if we go, let me undo what I just obliterated here. If we go up here, there's this drop-down that lets me pick which sort of lens do I want to have over this project. Do I want the ASP.NET 5 lens or the ASP.NET Core 5 lens? And that can be useful because you're probably going to, in some cases, need to be able to cross-compile. And then when you cross-compile, you're going to be like if-defing. So let's add an if-def.
An if-def, I think, is one of those things that people who have been doing C and C++ are familiar with, but not every .NET developer's used an if-def before.
Yeah, this is, normally, to be honest, you don't need to cross-compile your like web application to multiple
You just
target
need to
frameworks.
pick a framework.
You would just pick one. Like you could just delete the target framework. You literally just delete it from underneath the frameworks node in your project.json, and that would basically say I'm only going to compile for this thing. But if you want to keep that flexibility, like just in case I want to go to ASP.NET Core, .NET Core, how can I do that? Then you would be cross-compiling for it.
All right.
So and the way you cross-compile is you just use the framework moniker. So ASP.NET Core 5.0, for example, would say if I'm compiling for ASP.NET Core 5.0, then do this. And that's if I don't know. Let's put a little var whatever.
And that's gray because we're not in that context.
Yeah. So currently my lens says ASP.NET 5.
Okay.
So this is saying this code isn't relevant for this particular context. If I switch it to ASP.NET Core 5.0, then it's like, oh yeah, this code is now going to be part of the build, and it'll give you IntelliSense.
And because you're referencing both, when you build, you are really building it twice.
Literally building it twice.
All right.
And you'll see those compilation errors in the error output window as well. Yeah. Okay. So
Cool.
Move that. All right. So that's cross-compiling, and we already produced the NuGet packages on build. So I think we know the project system now. I think we should start adding some more stuff.
Yeah. Let's talk about building.
Let's talk about the actual application. So the next topic is we're going to talk about building ASP.NET 5 applications. Like, what does it mean to use this new HTTP request pipeline? Okay. So when we were talking earlier, we added a new NuGet package. Let's see if I still have it in here. Well, we added a class library. Let's add another dependency, which is that diagnostics package that we had before. And what this is middleware. When you're defining your request pipeline is made up of middleware. Before, you may have talked in terms of modules and maybe handlers. In ASP.NET 5, you're talking about middleware. And a middleware is something that it has a request delegate that takes an HTTP context, does some work, and then also has a next pointer. It has the option to also call the next guy, the next request delegate, essentially. And so you get that. What that means is you have a lot of power. In your middleware, you can do your stuff and then call the next guy. You could do your stuff and then just ignore the next guy and just return. That's kind of what that run method was doing, is it was just saying, I'm the request delegate that matters and nobody else matters, and so I'm just going to ignore anybody else in the pipeline. You could run some logic, call the next guy, and then after they come back, run some more logic. So you have complete control in the pipeline about where you do things relative to the next person in the chain. It does mean that order matters. Like, you order these middleware very carefully to make sure that they behave appropriately with each other.
So is this a more flexible kind of HTTP handler and module kind of joint? It's brought together. I can do the same stuff a handler can do. I can say I'm the only handler.
Yep.
And but at the same time, I could be a module that gets along with other modules.
Yep. And it's much more, in some sense, simplified. Like, the modules had a lot of, pipeline stages.
Right.
You have to learn what all those stages are and when they go. In this case, it's just one concept, which is your request delegate, and then the next request delegate. And you either call the next guy or you don't. And when you call it is up to you.
So it sounds like it's simpler, but also more powerful.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, so let's use some middleware. So when you use middleware, and that's an important word, use, app.use middleware. And here, if we look at the IntelliSense, it's a func that takes a request delegate and returns a request delegate. And that returned request delegate, that's you. And you either call the next guy in there or you don't. You can like inline, lambda your own
that's a little advanced.
Right, if you want to. It's a bit advanced. So normally you're just using middleware that other people wrote. And we've written a bunch that you can just take advantage of and use for your own purposes. For example, in the diagnostics package, there's a simple use, welcome page? Make sure that actually restored correctly.
I don't think you saved your project.json.
Save my project.json.
So when you save it, that's when the moment, there you go.
There it goes, and that should disappear. Okay. So all this pages is something really simple. It's like, is your server running? Do you have something there? Then you can put a little page there to see if it's running. Let's actually see if my server is running. Okay, great. So that's
so interesting. So that's the thing that makes the blue page.
Yes.
I always wondered what made the blue page.
It's its own little run method that's saying, I don't care about the next guy. I'm just going to take the request and return this lovely blue page.
Cool.
That's what does that. Okay. We could also this package has also an error page. This is the YSOD.
Use yellow screen of death.
It's not yellow anymore. Is that?
Let's see what it looks like.
Okay. Let's see if people like it. So I want to use the error page, which means I need an error. So let's create an error. So app.run, and we'll do that context. Let's throw an exception. I think I have to put this in curlies in this case for some reason. So throw invalid operation exception. How about that?
Very useful application.
Yeah, so all this app does is it throws exception, shows you the yellow screen of death.
That's good.
All right, let's look at it. We got a yellow screen. There's a yellow screen of death.
That's actually a really useful looking page.
So this has your stack trays. It's got query parameters.
Look at that.
Cookies over there, headers. The environment. It's all there. So that's the page that will get rendered.
ASP.NET, where getting an error is a joy. That's really nice, though. I like that.
Good.
It's got a lot of good context.
Now that would be a page you would use when you're under development. Like, that's not information you probably want to share with the world. So there's also a notion of a error handler, which is the idea that instead of instead of just displaying a yellow screen of death based off the exception, like go to a nice page that will display an oops thing, and you have an option of putting here a path, like I don't know, oops. I guess I could put it to HTML page.
And it sounds like middleware can do a little bit or a lot. In this case, it catches the exceptions, it logs the exceptions, it does 3 or 4 different things. It's not necessarily does one single responsibility.
Yes, yeah. It's a single piece of middleware generally has one piece of responsibility, and then you compose them. It's very composable notion. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
All right. So this would, if you get an exception, then direct you to like HTML page.html. I think that works. Let me see if that works. Does that actually work? Oh,
that's a different error page. What's this about?
What does this say? So this is the IS server. This is an IS server error page telling me that you did something wrong. Like you messed something up. So this is saying that there was, what does this say? I don't know. I've obviously done something wrong.
Argument exception. So it doesn't like HTML page as your thing that you passed in.
Yeah, what did I do?
Maybe you needed a slash.
Maybe, like that?
I don't know. I'm impressed with the attractive page, though.
No, so not like my
Pretty cool, though.
But anyway, yeah. It should be. It should go right to the HTML.
That's all good.
That's preview bits or probably user error in this case.
Yeah.
But let's look at some other more interesting middleware that we've maybe a little bit more practiced dealing with. So we did we did error page. Oh, let's switch it to the let's get rid of that.
Yeah, let's make it go back to saying, you can just Control Z your way back to saying hello.
All right, yeah, let's do that.
Oh, you're going to go with the permanent error?
And then I want to switch this now to run on something other than IS.
Okay.
How do I do that? So let's go to project.json. And we need a new package in order to make it run on an IS. We need another server. Like this is the IS server package. Let's do Microsoft ASP server, and let's use Web Listener.
Okay.
Okay. Now what is this package? So this is another server that I can host on top of instead of IIS. I'm going to leave the IIS one there just for. That doesn't hurt anything to have it there. And what this server is basically just like raw HPSys. Like I just want to host my web application right on top of HPSys. No IIS in the picture, no process management. I'm going to do it myself with my own process. Now I need then to be able to run that thing. And so I'm going to set up a command to actually run this app on top of Web Listener instead of IIS.
Okay.
Visual Studio normally takes care of running on top of IIS Express for me. But in the case of if I want to run on a different server, I've got to take care of that myself. So I got to tell the system what I want to do. So we do that with a command.
Okay.
And I'm going to set up a web command. And this is going to be a little, normally you don't have to hand type this in. In fact, I could just copy it from we normally just give it to you in the templates. And
I see, but you made an empty template.
I made an empty template
which
did not have it. So here, for example, is the web command that I'm about to use. And you can see you can do lots of different commands, like there's EF commands in there and so forth. In this case, I'm just going to do a web command.
So a command can be all sorts of things. Run a web server, test something, run a migration.
It's just a static void main function to do whatever you want. Now, the static void main function in this library, ASP NET hosting, is for hosting web applications. And it's passing it a couple of switches to say, please use Web Listener. I want to use the Web Listener to host on top of, and please host it at this URL. Let me pick a different URL. Let's do 5001 just to make sure we don't have any accidental conflicts.
In that comma at the end there?
Yeah, that was not right. We should get rid of that. That's why I had a little squiggly. Okay, and now to tell VS when I hit like F5, I want to run on that thing. Right-click here, we can go to Properties, and under Debug, we can now see that command shows up. So that's kind of cool. Okay, so save this. So now, instead of having IIS Express fire up whenever I run this application now, it's basically going to fire up a little console app and execute that web command, execute that main function to run it on Web Listener. Let's see if that works. Cross fingers. It says started. That's hopeful. Let me pop up an impartial third-party browser, and let's go to localhost. Not 5,000. Not 5,000. And we should see. If I remember correctly, I didn't add the hello world back, so it should
be an error.
The blue screen of death.
Yes.
The
attractive screen of death.
There it is. Now, interesting is that if I, let's go back to startup.cs. If I don't have this lovely error page, right?
Oh yeah, what would you get if you have an error with no error page?
That's right. There's no error page. Let me run it again. Restart the server.
Now you had to restart the server because there's no watcher in that case.
I think there is actually watcher support, but I don't know if it's wired up in this particular build. There's a watcher that can do similar things with the self-host case. Now, what's going to happen here? Like nothing. But you see, I see internal server error at the top, which means Chrome is saying a 500 came back, but there was nothing in it. There was just an exception, and it returned to 500. There was nothing to actually produce that error page. So this is one of those cases where this server, like HPSys, doesn't produce error pages. Like if you had done this on IIS, it would have actually produced
you get the different error page.
The frowny face error page.
Right.
Here you don't get it. Same thing if I go to my web root. If I go to HTML page, HTML, there's nothing there.
Because you never told it to.
Yeah. So there's another piece of middleware that we can use to fix that.
Because the web listener is not IIS and it does not return any static stuff for you.
Yep. So if we do app. I think I have to add the package.
It's definitely a lot more control. You really have absolute explicit control over everything that happens. It's almost like it's also less of a black box.
That's less of a black box. The nice thing about this actually is there was stuff in ASP.NET today that was there and you really couldn't get rid of it very easily. There was some overhead that you were kind of stuck with.
Yeah.
In this world, if you want to strip it way down and have like bare metal blazing fast performance, you can do that. Like if you don't need static file middleware, don't add it. There's no overhead for having it. If you don't need the error page, don't have it. You can have complete control. So the package you need to actually enable static files would be the static files middleware. So now, when I can say use static files here.
So when you add a middleware, it adds an extension method into iApplication Builder.
Yeah.
That's the standard convention.
Use and then the name of the middleware that you want to actually run.
Okay.
All right, so then we said started, and I should see my HTML page back now. There's some place.
Nice.
Okay. So that's building a request pipeline and how you deal with the new project system and install new packages. And, Hello World with building with ASP NET 5 and that's sort of get you going, to get you started in terms of getting your hand dirty.
And then we're going to take a break. When we come back, maybe we can cover configuration and dependency injection as we go into more details of MVC itself.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, when we start looking at MVC, then we're going to need to look at how ASP NET 5 makes dependency injection a first-class citizen of this app building world.
Very cool. So we have been doing some of the lower level stuff on ASP.NET 5, and we're going to start building on top of these frameworks all the way up to MVC 6, which is going to include Web API and all sorts of great stuff. We're having all sorts of good fun here on MVA. We'll be back after this short break.